Welcome to Travel Tales, a mini-series within Distress to Joyful Bailey's Way podcast. I'm your host, Bailey Raber, here to travel the world with you. In each episode, you'll hear firsthand how my travel experiences have gone, both within the United States and abroad. Together, we'll discover new cultures, learn about a variety of new places for you to go out and explore, bring light to how I navigate my bipolar disorder while traveling, and, most importantly, we'll have fun. You'll leave each episode stocked full of exciting new ideas, interesting information, and feeling like it's time to hop on a plane. So come on, friends, let's start exploring. Hello, friends. Today we are in Paris for Travel Tales, and this is the second part of day one. I broke this up into 2 different days because the first part was just, traveling to get there. And then we took a long nap in the afternoon, and then we did some things in the evening too. And so it just felt more appropriate to break it up. Otherwise, this would have been a really, really long episode, and I'm trying not to go over 30 minutes for y'all. Okay, so after landing in Paris at the Charles de Gaulle airport, we were promptly picked up by one of Monish's cousins, Prerna. A little backstory, Monish's aunt and uncle moved to Paris a couple of decades ago, and they proceeded to have 6 children. So due to being born and raised in Paris, all 6 of his cousins speak fluent French, and some, although not all of them, speak additional languages, including, but not limited to, English, Gujarati, which Gujarati is the mother tongue of Monish, and a mother tongue, it's like his regional language in India. Hindi and Spanish. There's also, I think there's 2 other languages in there for sure, but I'll get to that in just a second. So Prerna speaks fluent French and a little bit of Gujarati mixed with some broken English, which made communicating with her a super fun experience because neither myself nor Moni can speak French. So it was definitely an interesting car ride, to say the least, and thank God for Google Translate. Man, and I was also so tired at this point too that listening to them try to communicate was hilarious. It was a lot of laughter. It was a lot of trying to figure things out. And guys, if you haven't had the pleasure of trying to communicate with someone who doesn't speak the same language with you, it can be fun. It can be frustrating, don't get me wrong, especially if you're looking for something. But if you're just trying to have casual conversation with someone who doesn't speak fluent English, it can be really funny because some of the things that come out of their mouth, or if you know a little bit of the language they speak and what you say comes out, it's just fun. This is a little side note, but back when I was a server at the Melting Pot, I could speak what we called kitchen Spanish, meaning I knew words in Spanish that were for the stuff in the kitchen, because all the prep people in the back, most of them couldn't really speak English very much at all. So it was a lot easier just to say necesito pan, por favor. I need bread, please. Whatever. And so one day I asked for langusta, and I meant langosta, which I might have those flipped, but I said necesito langusta, por favor. And I was asking for a lobster, but the word that I actually said was love. So it was like I was asking Pedro for I need your love instead of I need a lobster, and the kitchen was dying laughing. They thought it was absolutely hilarious, and he turned red, and I was like, what is going on? And somebody translated for me, and they're like, you just said you need his love, not you need a lobster. So if you can see, this is the fun things that can come with not speaking fluently the same language. So just want to throw that out there just so you guys can kind of get an idea of where I'm going with some of this. So once we loaded ourselves and our luggage into Prerna's car, she informed us that we would be going to lunch as some of the family was free and they wanted to meet me. So I don't remember the name of the restaurant, but it was a South Indian / Sri Lankan fusion type of place. There were 7 of us in total, and they directed us to a large table that was available in the back. So the group of 7 people included Monish's aunt, which her name was Bhavna Foy. Foy is Gujarati for aunt. And his uncle Rohit Fua, and Fua is Gujarati for uncle. his cousin Bhavin, Bhavin's wife Mayurika, and of course, Prerna, myself, and Monish. So, what I found to be both fascinating and beautiful about being part of this group of people was that there was not one single common language that all 7 of us could speak in together. So, within the group, 5 out of 7 could speak English, 5 out of 7 could speak French, 3.5 out of 7 could speak Gujarati, and the 0.5 is for Prerna because she was not completely fluent. And then there was also some Hindi that could be spoken. And then one individual, Mayurika, she could speak Tamil because she's Sri Lankan. So that's their national language in that country, as far as I'm aware. So in order for us to all be able to communicate, there was a bunch of translating back and forth involved while many different languages were just flying around the table all at once. And it was seriously such a beautiful thing to be a part of. Guys, I can't tell you, we had another moment later on in the trip like this, and it is so beautiful to get to sit with a group of people who can't all speak the same language and have a meal together. Like, it really is. I don't know. I can't really describe it, but if you ever get the opportunity, please do it. It's fun. It might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you only speak English, but I'm telling you, it is such a beautiful thing to try to communicate with someone who doesn't speak your language and you don't speak their language, but you can still get things through. There's so much to do with language that is more than just words coming out of our mouth. So as an avid people watcher, I noticed that basically everyone in the restaurant was staring at our table at one point or another, and sometimes these stares would last a few minutes at a time. So the area that the restaurant was located in was heavily populated with Sri Lankans, along with a small mixture of Indians. So I was definitely the minority in the restaurant, as most of the other patrons were either Sri Lankan or Indian. So it must have been very odd for these people to see one white girl at a table full of Indian/Sri Lankans, with a combination of English, French, and Gujarati being spoken all around the table. The looks that people were giving us made me think that they were confused as to how we all knew each other / what the hell is going on here, which I find so entertaining. I love getting reactions out of people, and that's what this was. Like, people were reacting like, what the fuck is going on at this table here? Like, who's this one white girl eating this spicy food? Because mind you, if you've never had Sri Lankan food, it is so much spicier than Indian food. I think it's kind of more like Ethiopian food is what I heard, but it's really fucking spicy. So I'm sitting there eating that, the only white girl in the whole goddamn restaurant, sitting at this table where it's French, it's Gujarati, and it's English, and it's a mixture of all of this, and it's just fun and chaotic, and it was such a good time. Like, this was a great way to start out the trip. So I had so much fun at lunch because I got to spend time getting to know Monish's Paris family, as we call them, and I can now officially call them my family too, which is great. His cousins all have such fun personalities, and his aunt and uncle were truly a joy to be around. So although this was my first time meeting everybody, I felt right at home, and I really enjoyed getting to know more about everybody's lives in Paris. So after lunch was finished, we piled 6 of us into Prerna's little 5-person car as we were dropping off Foy and Fua at their house, which was literally just right around the corner. It was super ridiculous, but also a lot of fun shoving all of us into the car. So Bhavan chose to walk as the distance really wasn't far, and there definitely was no more room for him to fit in the car. Which I'm going to have photos of this at the slideshow, at the end of this YouTube video or in the separate little 2-minute video that I will put on YouTube later. So be on the lookout for that. So while dropping off Foy and Fua, we said temporary goodbyes to Bhavan and Mayurika as Prerna was now taking us to Viba's place where we would reside throughout our stay in Paris. I was exhausted by this point as I did not sleep well on the plane from the US to Paris, and it was now late afternoon. So due to this, I slept for most of the car ride despite how excited I was to finally be in this city that I had long dreamt about visiting. And actually, there was a shit ton of traffic too. So that's another reason why I was just, knocked out sleeping. We were sitting in so much traffic. So upon arriving at Viva's place, she cheerfully and warmly greeted us, which felt so great. I knew then that we would have such a great time staying with her. She quickly got us situated, then we all decided to take a nap as it had been a long day. When we finally woke up, it was time for dinner, and Viva made some sandwiches for us to snack on as we weren't too terribly hungry. Viva then asked if we wanted to go out and explore the city a little, or if we would prefer to stay inside and rest. I quickly responded with, "Let's go explore," without allowing Monish the opportunity to give his input. So thankfully, he is always ready for a new adventure, so the three of us set out to see the magic of Paris at nighttime. So technically, Viva lives in a suburb of Paris, so we needed transportation in order to be able to walk around some of the infamous Parisian streets that I was super excited to explore. She owns a Vespa, but it could only transport two of us, so one of us would need to take the metro, which is known as the subway in the US, while the other two rode on the Vespa. Moni volunteered as tribute since it was nighttime, and he didn't want me wandering around the subway alone at night, as it could be dangerous since I'm a woman. Before Viva and I set out, she first drove Moni to the bouche de métro, which is a French phrase that means the mouth of the metro, so that he could get a head start since public transportation would take a little bit longer, and also just so he didn't have to walk. The mouth of the metro really wasn't far from Viva's house. Me and Moni walked it so many times throughout this trip. But it was nighttime. It was just a lot quicker for her to just take him down, come back, and get me. And then off we went. So we parked the Vespa on a street in the area near the Notre Dame Cathedral, as there was plenty to feast our eyes on in this section of the city. After snapping some photos in front of the infamous cathedral, we then made our way to Pont Neuf, the oldest bridge in the city of Paris that crosses over the Seine River. I was fascinated to learn that this bridge was built in the early 1600s and is still standing today. Of course, there's since been some restoration, as one would expect, but the idea that I was walking across a bridge that was older than the United States was super captivating. And fun fact, I had no idea that this bridge was what it was until we got there. So Viva was kind of guiding us around the city without telling us where we were going. She was just leading us and we were following her and just going with it, which was really cool. I am the type that, I like to plan things. I like to know what's going on. So I also think it is really, really important to just do things spontaneously. I think that there should be a combination of plans and spontaneity in life just to give a good balance. You can't plan everything. And if you do, everything doesn't go as planned anyways. So throwing in some spontaneity here and there, it just allows you to be a little bit more agile when you do plan something and things do not go as planned. If you have not tuned into, I believe it's Travel Tales number 2, it's the trip to Hot Springs, Arkansas. I highly recommend you tune into that, especially if you're a massive planner like myself. That was the first trip where I learned to just let go and go with the flow when traveling, which again, I think is so, so, so important. And it can be really hard. It can be really hard to let go. So if you're somebody who has a hard time when plans change or when things don't go as planned, I really recommend you tune into Travel Tales about the trip to Hot Springs, Arkansas. It's from season 4. It's from last season, so last year. Seriously, I tell you guys how I got over this and how I've overcome it and how it allows me to have so much more fun when traveling. Because guys, had I been a stickler with the plan, we would not have gone out and explored Paris at nighttime like this. We would not have done that at all. So, from here, we continued walking the brightly lit Parisian streets. While I was under the impression that we were aimlessly roaming around, Viva had a plan that she neglected to tell us as she wanted it to be a surprise. So we began to approach a very large building, which turned out to be the Louvre. It was now closed as it was after 11 p.m., but so sorry. We were able to walk around to the backside and take a few photos with the infamous Louvre Pyramid, which I'm sure you guys all know what I'm talking about when I say the Louvre Pyramid. So due to the time, the area was basically empty, which allowed us the opportunity to capture a few photos without people in the background. Such a rarity, y'all. So unfortunately for us, they had already turned all the lights off inside the pyramid, so we didn't get to see it in its blazing glory, but we were still satisfied nonetheless. And I will say, I didn't mention this in the article, so if you've read the article or if you haven't, this is a piece that's not in there. I think part of the reason why the Louvre was not turned on, the Louvre Pyramid lights were not turned on, is because when we were in Paris, which was March of 2023, they were having, let me start over. So when we were in Paris in March of 2023, we learned that Paris was kind of struggling with getting electricity because of the Russian war on the Ukraine. So I think that don't quote me on this, but I think that they kind of either couldn't get supplies from Russia or they were lessening how much supplies they were getting from them. But we learned that because of that, they were doing a lot of conserving of electricity. One of the big ways that they did this, which we found out coming home from Disneyland, which I will talk about this in a future episode. Don't worry, it'll be like 2 months away. So when you hear this again, you'll have forgotten about it by then, I'm sure. But his cousin, a different cousin, she drove us home from Disneyland. It was super late at night. It was like midnight. And all of the lights on the highway were off. We were driving on a highway in the absolute dark, you guys. It was fucking insane. And I was like, why is it so dark? Like, why are these lights not on? And that's when we learned that the French government was turning off lights like that in order to conserve energy. And they said that there was a time when the Eiffel Tower wasn't lighting up at nighttime either, which is also wild. And I'm so glad that that was not the case when we were there, because that would have been very, very upsetting. But yeah, they were conserving energy in a bunch of different ways. And so I wonder if the Louvre Pyramid was turned off because of that. It would make sense if it was. So just gonna slide that little bit of fun facts in there for y'all. So lastly, we made our way over to Point des Arts, also known as the Lovelock Bridge. So you might have heard of this, but this bridge got its nickname from the large amount of couples, which were typically tourists, who would write their names on a padlock, attach it to the bridge, and then toss the key into the river as a symbol for their eternal love for each other. I did my research ahead of time, so I was fully aware of the fact that not only is it now illegal to participate in attaching a lock to the bridge, but it's also frowned upon by Parisians as they are very prideful about the appearance of their city. So attaching the locks became an illegal act because at one point there were so many locks on the bridge that its weight became a hazard to the pedestrians utilizing it. So the city of Paris has actually removed the majority of the locks at this point. So the once lock-covered bridge is now scarce and empty, with locks remaining only in a few sections of the bridge, typically around some lamp posts. So in the article, I linked another article that talks about why the city of Paris removed all the locks and all that kind of stuff and when that happened, because that was actually super recent that they did that. So it was really interesting to go into a lot of little touristy thrift shops, little touristy shops, you know what I mean? Like to buy souvenirs. Souvenir shops. That's what those things are called. Souvenir shops were on every other corner, if not every freaking corner. And a lot of them, even on the Seine River, had these padlocks available for sale. And I'm like, dude, are you guys just trying to get rid of extra inventory or what? Because this is illegal. And hopefully tourists know this. And if not, guys, if you plan to go to Paris, please know that it is illegal. Do not do it. It is disrespectful to Parisians and to the French to do this at this point. Not just because it's illegal, but also, again, like I said, Parisians are very prideful in the appearance of their city. So don't fuck it up. Like, be a good tourist, please. So, yeah, that was surprising to find padlocks everywhere. And I'm really glad that I looked this up ahead of time because I might have made that mistake myself, to be honest. So, again, I probably have said this 1,000 times before, but if you're planning to visit another country, do your research. Do your research ahead of time. Learn what's respectful and what's disrespectful in other cultures. Learn some common phrases that you can use, not just out of necessity, but also just out of respect for the culture that you're visiting, you guys. That to me is so, so important, and people appreciate it. They appreciate it when you learn how to say thank you in Thai, or how to say, can I please have more, or where's the restroom in Spanish, like whatever. People really appreciate that. So do your part. By this point, it was past midnight and the streets had become bare with hardly any people in sight, which was actually really cool because from here on out, it was about to be crowded and crazy as hell everywhere we went. So we decided to end our exploration for now and begin again the next morning when the sun would be shining bright. So there we go. There's our first evening in Paris, getting to explore the city. I will say I loved getting to ride on the Vespa with Viva. I love Vespas. I talked about this just a couple episodes back. I think it was the day that I went sari shopping in India when I got to ride Moni's Vespa for the first time in India. So getting to ride one in Paris too, I was like, man, I'm living my best life. Also, I know that certain places in Europe you can rent those, and as long as you're driving on the same side of the road, it doesn't really matter. If you have, you know what I mean? Like, you can rent them if you're not in the UK. I don't know if you can rent them in the UK. I'm just going to throw that out there. But like in India, they drive on the left side of the road just like they do in the UK. So I can't drive in India. I cannot, because everything is ass backwards. It is terrifying. Moni can do it. He did it in the car a couple times this last trip in December of 23, but he mainly only stuck to doing it on the scooter just because of safety reasons. But I'm pretty positive in Rome you can rent a Vespa and like run around on that. I'm sure you can in Paris too. I don't think it would be cheap, but it would be fun. Trust me from experience. So before I close out for today, for those of you on YouTube, I have a little mini Eiffel Tower that I'm sharing with you guys. So this thing's probably about 3.5 inches tall, maybe 4 inches tall. And it's just a little bronze statue that says Paris on it. I have a whole shelf right here next to me full of little trinkets like this. I have limited myself. I usually now just get one every time I go to a new country, because otherwise this shelf would be, I mean, it's already covered, but it would be worse. Because also, guys, like, here's the thing. Part of the reason why I'm able to afford so much travel, and especially travel abroad to other countries on the other side of the world, is because we're not stuffed people. I think I mentioned this before. We don't spend a lot of money on things. I thrift like crazy in the US. We save money as much as possible. We eat at home, 95% of the week, this kind of thing. Because I would rather put my money towards travel than towards bringing home 15 different t-shirts that say I've been in Paris or what the hell ever. And sometimes it's hard. Let me just tell you, when we were in Disneyland, there was this really, really beautiful crown. And I wanted it so bad. And it was like 60 euros. And I thought about it. And I looked at Moni and I was like, I really want this. And he's like, do you need it? And I looked at him. I was like, I don't need it. I won't get it. Because again, I'm a firm believer that buying things is just temporary joy, whereas exploring and experiencing things brings joy in so many more ways. Because looking back on these memories, like sitting here with you guys and telling this story, like I love doing this. I love getting to reminisce on all of my travel experiences. So fun fact, I got 3 of these for like 10 euros, I think. So we've gifted them to some people as well because I only needed one. But yeah, so there you guys have it. The next day is going to be day 2. It's going to be a full day of roaming through Paris. I'm super, super, super excited to continue, exploring Paris with you guys. This, again, was a dream of a lifetime for me, and I'm so glad that I was able to do it, and it definitely won't be my last time, especially since we have our Paris family there. But until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye! Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Travel Tales. Head on over to whatishaybellsdoing.com/travel to find the resources mentioned in today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favorite listening platform or write a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on new episode releases. See you next time for another great adventure. Bye!